Saturday, May 17, 2003. A birthday party in Saipan. Balloons tied to a mailbox. Children's laughter echoing through a quiet neighborhood. And then, silence. 5-year-old Aiden Cruz disappeared in 47 minutes. He was there, playing with other children in the front yard of the Rodriguez family home. Pin the tail on the donkey. Musical chairs. Cake with blue frosting. Then he wandered toward the backyard. And he was gone. No screams. No struggle. No witnesses. His mother, Elena, arrived to pick him up early. "Where's Aiden?" she asked. The question that would define the next 20 years of her life. Parents scattered across the property, calling his name. Panic rising with each unanswered call. Police arrived 18 minutes later. They found his shoes. Small sneakers with dinosaur patterns, partially hidden under bushes near the back fence. Just the shoes. Nothing else. The birthday decorations still swayed in the warm Pacific breeze. Music still played from a small speaker. But Aiden Cruz had vanished. By the time his mother realized he was missing, Aiden had already been gone for 47 minutes. Those 47 minutes would remain a mystery for 2 decades. Before we continue with Aiden's story, if you're interested in solved cold cases like this one, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. These stories matter. These families deserve to be heard. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? What cold cases from your area should we investigate next? Your suggestions help us bring forgotten stories back into the light. Now, let's go back to that afternoon in Saipan, to a small island community, and to a little boy who loved dinosaurs. Let's go back to when everything changed. Saipan, 2003. The northern Mariana Islands. A small territory where the Pacific Ocean stretches endlessly in every direction, where everyone knows everyone, where children ride bicycles down dusty roads without fear, where neighbors leave doors unlocked and trust is currency. This is the world Aiden Cruz knew. The only world he'd ever known. The Cruz family had moved to Saipan 2 years earlier, drawn by work opportunities and the promise of a slower, safer life. Marco Cruz worked as a fisherman, leaving before dawn most days, returning with the sun low on the horizon, his hands rough and salt-stained. Elena Cruz worked the front desk at a modest hotel near the beach, greeting tourists with a warm smile that reflected genuine island hospitality. They lived in a small house painted pale yellow, with a tiny front porch and a yard where hibiscus flowers bloomed year-round. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. And for 5-year-old Aiden, it was paradise. Aiden was their only child. Their miracle, as Elena called him. She'd suffered 2 miscarriages before Aiden arrived, healthy and screaming, in 1998. From the moment he could walk, he was curious about everything. He collected rocks from the beach, convinced each one was a dinosaur fossil. His bedroom walls were covered with pictures he'd drawn, mostly T-Rexes and Stegosauruses, rendered in crayon with the unsteady hand of childhood. He attended kindergarten at San Vicente Elementary, where his teacher, Mrs. Cabrera, would later tell police he was the sweetest child, always sharing his snacks, always making other kids laugh. He had his mother's dark eyes and his father's quick smile. He was obsessed with the movie Jurassic Park, despite being too young to understand most of it. He watched it on repeat, memorizing the roar of every dinosaur. The Rodriguez family lived just 3 houses down the same street. Their son was having a birthday party, turning 7, and Aiden had been excited for days. He'd helped his mother wrap the present, talking nonstop about the games they'd play, the cake they'd eat, the fun he'd have. It was supposed to be just another Saturday. Another innocent childhood memory in the making. In a place where children roamed safely, where doors stayed unlocked, no one imagined that danger could live so close to home. Let's reconstruct that afternoon. Minute by minute. Because somewhere in these 47 minutes, the truth was hiding. 2:15 p.m. Elena Cruz walks Aiden down the street to the Rodriguez home. He's wearing his favorite shirt, red, with a green dinosaur on the front. Denim shorts. Those sneakers with dinosaur patterns. He's clutching the wrapped present, barely able to contain his excitement. Elena stays briefly, chatting with other parents in the front yard. There are about 12 children at the party, ranging in age from 4 to 8. 3 other parents are staying to help supervise. The Rodriguez family seems organized, prepared. Elena feels comfortable leaving. 2:30 p.m. The children play musical chairs on the front lawn. Aiden is laughing, running in circles with the other kids when the music stops. He doesn't win, but he doesn't seem to care. Pure joy on his face. 2:42 p.m. Pin the tail on the donkey. Aiden is spun around, dizzy, stumbling with the paper tail in his hand. He misses the donkey entirely, placing the tail on the fence. More laughter. No one notices anything wrong. Nothing is wrong. 2:47 p.m. Cake time. The children are herded inside to the dining room. Blue frosting, cartoon characters on the cake, candles being lit. This is where the timeline gets murky. Several parents would later report seeing Aiden in the dining room. But Mrs. Rodriguez, the birthday boy's mother, remembers him wandering back toward the sliding glass door that leads to the backyard. "I thought he needed the bathroom," she'd tell police later, her voice shaking. "I thought he'd come right back." 2:52 p.m. This is the last confirmed sighting. A father named David Mendiola, standing near the back door, sees Aiden near the fence that separates the backyard from an undeveloped lot behind the property. Aiden appears to be alone, looking at something on the ground. Maybe a bug. Maybe a flower. David doesn't think anything of it. He turns back to the party inside. 2:52 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. 23 minutes of nothing. No one sees Aiden. No one hears him. The party continues inside. Cake, presents, more games. The chaos of children's laughter masks his absence. 3:15 p.m. Elena arrives to pick up Aiden early. She has to work an evening shift at the hotel and wants to get him home, fed, and settled with a babysitter. She walks into the Rodriguez house, smiling, expecting to find her son's face covered in blue frosting. "Where's Aiden?" she asks Mrs. Rodriguez. Mrs. Rodriguez looks around the dining room, confused. "He was just here." 3:17 p.m. The realization. He's not in the dining room. Not in the bathroom. Not in the front yard. Parents begin calling his name, voices rising with each unanswered call. Children stop playing, sensing the adult panic. 3:22 p.m. Someone checks the backyard. The gate is closed but unlatched. "Aiden." The name echoes against the fence, against the trees, against the empty lot beyond. Nothing. 3:28 p.m. Elena is hysterical now. Parents spread out, searching the street, neighboring yards, calling 911. 3:34 p.m. Police are dispatched. Emergency response protocol for a missing child. 3:41 p.m. An officer searching the perimeter finds the shoes. Hidden partially under bushes near the back fence line, almost deliberately placed out of sight. Just the shoes. Both of them, side by side. No Aiden. No footprints leading away. No signs of struggle. No one saw him leave. No one heard him cry out. It was as if the island itself had swallowed him whole. The first 48 hours after a child disappears are critical. Everyone knows this. Law enforcement knows this. And so the island of Saipan mobilized with desperate urgency. Within 2 hours, the neighborhood was swarming with police officers. The Saipan Department of Public Safety deployed every available unit. Search dogs arrived from the K9 unit, German shepherds trained to track human scent. They picked up Aiden's trail immediately, following it from the Rodriguez house to the back fence. And then the dogs stopped. Confused. Circling. The scent disappeared at the fence line, as if Aiden had simply evaporated. The U.S. Coast Guard deployed boats to search the nearby coastline. The fear, unspoken but present in everyone's mind, was that somehow Aiden had wandered to the water. That the Pacific had claimed him. Divers searched the shallows. They found nothing. By nightfall, over 100 volunteers had gathered. Locals who knew the terrain, who knew every hidden path, every abandoned structure, every place a small child might wander. They moved through the undeveloped lots behind the Rodriguez property, through dense vegetation, calling Aiden's name until their voices went hoarse. Flashlights cut through the darkness like desperate prayers. Detective Samuel Reyes took command of the investigation. 43 years old, 20 years with the Department of Public Safety, he was methodical, experienced, and quietly haunted by a previous case, a teenage girl who'd disappeared in 1998 and was never found. He'd promised himself he wouldn't let that happen again. The Rodriguez family was questioned extensively. Every parent who'd been at the party was interviewed. Timelines were reconstructed over and over. Who saw what when? The questions became repetitive, invasive, exhausting. Were you watching the children every moment? Did you see anything suspicious? Anyone unfamiliar in the neighborhood? Marco and Aiden Cruz faced the worst of it. Police protocol demands investigating the family first. Statistically, most crimes against children involve someone close to them. Marco's whereabouts that afternoon were confirmed. He'd been on a fishing boat with 3 other men, miles offshore. Elena had been at work until she left to pick up Aiden. Both were cleared quickly, but the questions felt like accusations. Like judgment. Roadblocks were set up at key points around the island. Every vehicle was stopped, searched. Ports and the airport were notified. If someone had taken Aiden, they hadn't left Saipan. Not yet. By the end of the first 48 hours, flyers were everywhere. Aiden's kindergarten photo, that bright smile, those dark eyes, stared out from telephone poles, store windows, car windshields. Missing, Aiden Cruz, 5 years old, last seen wearing red dinosaur shirt and denim shorts. But there were no solid leads. No witnesses to an abduction. No ransom demand. No body. Just those shoes by the fence. Plus, hidden. As if someone had wanted to buy time. Detective Reyes couldn't shake that detail. Those shoes. They weren't dropped in panic. They were carefully positioned, partially concealed. It suggested intentionality. Planning. But who? And what? In the days and weeks that followed, Saipan transformed. The island that had felt like paradise became something else. Something darker. Fear settled over the community like humidity, thick, inescapable, suffocating. Parents who had once let their children play freely in yards now kept them inside. Doors that had stayed unlocked for generations were bolted. Neighbors who trusted each other implicitly began looking at one another with suspicion. Because if Aiden could vanish from a supervised birthday party, then nowhere was safe. No one was safe. The Rodriguez family faced the worst of it. Whispers started immediately. Why weren't they watching more carefully? How does a child disappear from your own backyard? Some of the gossip was vicious, ugly. Mrs. Rodriguez stopped going to church because she couldn't bear the stares. Their younger son, the birthday boy, had nightmares for months. But the Cruz family suffered differently. Elena stopped working. She spent every day searching, driving the same roads repeatedly, walking into dense jungle terrain calling Aiden's name. She lost weight rapidly. Her hair, which had been black and lustrous, began showing gray within months. Ugly rumors spread about Marco. Whispers about financial troubles. He'd borrowed money to buy the house, was behind on payments. Whispers about marital problems. Neighbors claimed they'd heard arguments. All of it was unfounded, cruel, the kind of speculation that fills the void when there are no answers. A registered sex offender living 2 miles from the Rodriguez house was investigated thoroughly. Police searched his property, interviewed him for hours. He had an alibi, confirmed by multiple witnesses. He was cleared, but his house was vandalized anyway. Someone spray-painted "Monster" across his garage door. Some locals suspected transient workers from construction sites. Saipan had seen an influx of contract laborers from other countries. Perhaps someone had taken Aiden, planning to leave the island. Police investigated every lead, checking employment records, interviewing dozens of workers. Nothing. Church vigils were held weekly. Candles flickering in the darkness, prayers whispered in Chamorro and English, hymns sung with tears streaming down faces. Elena attended every single one, clutching a framed photo of Aiden, rocking slightly, lost in her grief. The island's innocence was shattered. Childhood freedom ended. Trust evaporated. And underneath it all, a terrible question haunted everyone. In a town of 600 people, where everyone knew everyone, how could a child simply disappear? Someone knew something. Someone had to know. In communities this small, secrets don't exist. Not for long. But silence can be its own kind of crime. And the silence around Aiden's disappearance was deafening. Detective Samuel Reyes couldn't let go. 2003 turned to 2004. 2004 became 2006. Years accumulated like dust on an old case file. But Reyes kept Aiden's folder on his desk, refusing to let it be archived in the cold case storage room in the basement. He revisited the Rodriguez house so many times that Mrs. Rodriguez began to dread seeing his car pull up. He'd walk the property again, measuring distances, checking sight lines, standing where the shoes were found and trying to understand the logistics. How does a 5-year-old child disappear from a fenced backyard in under 25 minutes? Where does the scent trail end so abruptly? Why hide the shoes? His colleagues urged him to move on. You've done everything possible, Sam. Sometimes we don't get answers. Sometimes cases just stay cold. But Reyes couldn't accept that. Wouldn't accept that. His marriage began to suffer. His wife, Patricia, complained that he was never fully present, even when home. You're always thinking about that boy, she'd say, not unkindly. She was right. He was always thinking about that boy. Every year on May 17th, the anniversary of Aiden's disappearance, Reyes would drive to the Rodriguez house and walk the route. From the front yard, through the side gate, to the back fence. He'd stand there, alone, trying to see what everyone had missed. He developed theories. Quiet theories he couldn't prove. He kept coming back to Miguel Rodriguez, the older son, 18 at the time of the disappearance. During those first interviews, something about Miguel's body language had bothered Reyes. The young man had seemed nervous, evasive. But Miguel had an alibi. He was supposedly at a friend's house that afternoon, confirmed by multiple witnesses. Still, Reyes pulled Miguel's records. Marijuana possession charges from when he was 17. A DUI at 19. Small-time stuff, but it painted a picture of a troubled young man. Reyes interviewed Miguel 3 more times over the years, always hoping something would crack. It never did. The case was officially designated cold in 2008. Budget constraints, lack of leads, too many other active cases demanding attention. The department needed to allocate resources elsewhere. But Reyes maintained contact with Elena. He'd call her every few months, just to check in. These conversations were brutal, hearing the hope in her voice when she answered, knowing he had nothing new to tell her. Each time, he felt like he was failing her all over again. Elena and Marco divorced in 2009. The grief had become a third presence in their marriage, poisoning everything. Marco remarried and moved to Guam, unable to stay on an island where every street reminded him of his lost son. Elena stayed. She couldn't leave. What if Aiden came back and she wasn't there? Reyes retired in 2018, handing over his notes to a younger detective who treated the case with polite distance. Professional courtesy, nothing more. Reyes had a hunch about Miguel Rodriguez. Something in the young man's eyes during those interviews. But hunches don't solve cases. Evidence does. And there was none. For Aiden Cruz, hope was a form of torture. A call from Guam police. A child matching Aiden's description had been spotted with an unfamiliar couple at a shopping center. Elena drove herself to the airport, caught the next flight, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might collapse. She arrived at the police station, hands shaking, barely breathing. It wasn't him. The child was Filipino, 2 years older than Aiden would have been. Similar hair, similar build. But not him. Elena flew back to Saipan in a daze. She didn't cry on the plane. She'd learned that tears didn't help. Remains discovered in dense jungle terrain, about 5 miles from the Rodriguez house. Partial skeleton, small. Police called Elena before the news broke publicly, trying to prepare her gently. She vomited immediately before they could finish the sentence. The remains belonged to a hiker from the 1990s, identified through dental records. Not a child at all. But for 36 hours, before confirmation came through, Elena existed in a horrific limbo between nightmare and closure. An anonymous tip to the police hotline. A distorted voice claiming Aiden had been taken off-island by boat, sold to human traffickers, alive somewhere in Southeast Asia. Federal investigators got involved. The tip was traced to a prepaid phone purchased with cash. Untraceable. The lead evaporated. But for weeks, Elena researched human trafficking, child exploitation rings, staring at grainy photographs of rescued children online, searching every face for her son. Aiden would be 13 now. Would she even recognize him? A convicted predator from Tinian, a neighboring island, was arrested for multiple assaults. During interrogation, he confessed to several unsolved cases, apparently seeking some kind of twisted notoriety. Aiden's case was among those he claimed responsibility for. Detectives reviewed every detail. The predator's timeline didn't match. He'd been in prison on Tinian during May 2003. Another false confession from a disturbed individual seeking attention. Each false lead followed the same cruel pattern. The phone call. The surge of impossible hope. The investigation. The crushing disappointment. And Elena, caught in the cycle, aged by each repetition. Marco remarried in 2010. He had a daughter with his new wife. He moved on, or tried to. He had to, for his own survival. Elena couldn't. Wouldn't. She worked at a small gift shop near the beach, living in the same pale yellow house, keeping Aiden's bedroom exactly as it had been. His dinosaur drawings still on the walls. His toys in the same positions. Waiting. 20 years of chasing shadows. 20 years of wrong turns. And all the while, the truth lived 3 houses down from where Aiden vanished. By 2020, Aiden Cruz's case existed only in filing cabinets and fading memories. The new detective assigned to cold cases, a woman in her early 30s named Lisa Santos, had never met Aiden's family. She'd reviewed the file once, briefly, when she inherited the department's unsolved cases. Thorough initial investigation, she noted. No obvious leads. Probably a stranger abduction, body never recovered. Tragic but not uncommon. She moved on to other cases that seemed more solvable. Elena Cruz was 50 years old now. Her face had been carved by grief into something harder, older than her years. She still worked at the gift shop. She still lived in that house. And she still maintained Aiden's bedroom like a shrine. Every morning, she went into his room and spoke to him. "Good morning, baby. Mama's here. I'll always be here." She wasn't crazy, she knew he wasn't there. But the ritual kept her tethered to something. To hope maybe. Or just to the habit of motherhood. The Saipan community had moved on. New families filled the neighborhoods. New children played in yards, riding bicycles, laughing. They didn't know the story of the boy who vanished from a birthday party. It had faded into local legend, the kind of cautionary tale parents told half-heartedly, "Be careful. Stay where I can see you." The Rodriguez family still lived in their home. Miguel Rodriguez was 38 now, married with 2 children of his own, a daughter, 7, and a son, 4. He worked in construction, building houses on the island. He seemed, from the outside, to have a normal life. A good life, even. His parents were older, quieter. They rarely attended community events anymore. The stain of that day never fully washed away. On the surface, life continued. The island was beautiful as ever. The ocean still stretched endlessly. The sun still rose and set with reliable indifference. But underneath, the wound never healed. It just stopped bleeding visibly. Some cases don't get solved. They just stop being investigated. But in 2023, 20 years after that birthday party, the past refused to stay buried. March 14, 2023. A Tuesday morning. Detective Lisa Santos was reviewing paperwork at her desk when the front desk officer called. "There's a walk-in. Says he needs to talk to someone about Aiden Cruz." Santos looked up, confused. That name. She knew that name. The old cold case. 20 years old now. Send him back. Miguel Rodriguez walked into the interview room looking like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Maybe years. His face was pale, eyes sunken, hands shaking visibly. He was 40 years old but looked 60. "I need to tell you what happened to Aiden," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you what I did." The confession unfolded slowly, painfully, over 4 hours. Santos recorded every word, her own hands shaking as she realized what she was hearing. Miguel had been home that afternoon. May 17, 2003. His alibi was a lie. Friends had covered for him, thinking he'd just been smoking weed, not wanting to get him in trouble. He was in the backyard shed, high, trying to escape family obligations and the chaos of his little brother's party. When Aiden wandered into the backyard, approaching the shed with that innocent curiosity children have, Miguel had snapped. I told him to get out. That this was my space. That the kids weren't supposed to be back here. Miguel's voice cracked. He just looked at me. He didn't understand why I was angry. He was 5. He was just a little kid. The confrontation escalated. Miguel, high and paranoid and irrationally territorial, grabbed Aiden by the shoulders, shaking him. I just wanted him to leave. I just wanted to be left alone. Aiden fell. His head struck the corner of a metal toolbox. There was blood. Lots of blood. And then, silence. He wasn't moving, Miguel whispered. I tried to wake him up. I kept saying, please wake up, please. But he wouldn't. I checked for breathing. For a pulse. I didn't know what I was doing. I was high and terrified and he wasn't moving. Aiden was dead. In panic, Miguel hid the body in the shed, covered it with tarps and old boxes. He took off Aiden's shoes and hid them by the fence, thinking it might make it look like Aiden had run away. Then he went to his room, took a shower, changed clothes, tried to act normal. That night, while search parties scoured the neighborhood, while police interviewed his family, while Aiden Cruz screamed her son's name into the darkness, Miguel waited until 3 a.m. When activity moved to other areas, when exhaustion made searchers sloppy, he carried Aiden's small body to his car, drove to a remote jungle location he knew from hiking and buried him. I've thought about him every single day for 20 years, Miguel said, tears streaming down his face. Every single day. I see his face. I hear him. I have 2 kids now, and when my daughter turned 5, I couldn't breathe. That's how old he was. That's how small. Therapy had brought him to this point. Years of therapy, the weight of the secret destroying him from inside, his marriage crumbling under the weight of his unexplained depression and anxiety. I deserve whatever happens to me, he said. But Elena deserves to know. She deserves to bury her son. I can't keep him from her anymore. Detective Santos sat in stunned silence. Then she asked the question that needed to be asked. Can you show us where he is? Miguel nodded. Yes. I'll show you everything. For 20 years, Miguel Rodriguez had lived 3 houses down from Aiden Cruz. He'd seen her searching. He'd seen the flyers. He'd attended the vigils, standing in the back, drowning in guilt. And he'd said nothing. Within 2 hours, forensic teams were mobilized. Miguel Rodriguez, under police escort, directed them to a location in the dense jungle terrain about 7 miles from the neighborhood, an area that had actually been searched in those first frantic days, but not thoroughly enough. The excavation team worked carefully, methodically. Cameras documented every moment. The soil was dense, root systems had grown through the site over 2 decades. And then they found him. Small bones. Fragments of fabric, red material, faded but recognizable. The second sneaker, still partially intact, with that dinosaur pattern visible. And finally, Aiden's skeleton, curled on its side, as if sleeping. The forensic anthropologist worked with careful reverence, extracting each piece, documenting everything. DNA samples were taken, though by this point, with Miguel's confession and the physical evidence, there was little doubt. The medical examiner's preliminary report confirmed blunt force trauma to the skull, consistent with Miguel's account. Time of death impossible to determine precisely after 20 years, but skeletal development confirmed the age, approximately 5 years old. Aiden Cruz had been found. Miguel Rodriguez was arrested on scene, charged with manslaughter. The decision not to pursue murder charges came down to legal complexities. The time elapsed, the nature of the initial incident, the question of intent. Prosecutors believed manslaughter would be easier to prove and would still result in significant prison time. The arrest made international news within hours. Saipan cold case solved after 20 years, family friend confesses. Media trucks arrived on the island. Reporters camped outside the Rodriguez house, outside Elena's house, outside the police station. The community's reaction was volcanic. Shock first, then betrayal, then rage. The Rodriguez family home was vandalized within 24 hours. Windows smashed. Murder spray painted across the garage. Miguel's wife, Christina, packed her children in the car and fled to her parents' home on Guam. She filed for divorce within the week. Miguel's parents faced death threats. His father, 73 years old, stood on his front porch one morning and told gathered reporters, "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." He was crying. "My son is a monster. I don't understand. I don't understand." But the worst moment came when Detective Santos drove to Elena's house to deliver the news. Elena answered the door, saw the detective's face, and knew. She just knew. "You found him?" "Yes, ma'am." Elena didn't scream. Didn't cry. She just folded in on herself, collapsing slowly to her knees, making a sound no human should ever have to make, the sound of 20 years of hope dying all at once. Because for 20 years, some part of her had believed he might still be alive. Somewhere, somehow. Now she knew. He'd been dead the whole time. Dead and buried 7 miles away while she'd searched endlessly. Former Detective Samuel Reyes watched the news coverage from his living room in Guam, where he'd retired. When they showed Miguel Rodriguez being led away in handcuffs, Reyes wept. He'd been right. His instinct about the older Rodriguez son had been correct. But instinct hadn't been enough. Justice had finally arrived. But no one felt victorious. Some truths don't set you free. They just rearrange your prison. The trial began in October 2023. Miguel Rodriguez pleaded guilty to manslaughter, but the court still required full testimony. The community needed to understand. The family deserved details. And so, in a small courtroom packed with journalists, community members, and Aiden Cruz sitting in the front row, Miguel told his story again. His lawyer painted a picture of a troubled young man. Addiction issues from age 16, marijuana and alcohol abuse, an explosive temper he'd never learned to control, mental health problems that had gone untreated. Not excuses, the lawyer emphasized. Context. On May 17, 2003, my client was in the backyard shed, self-medicating with marijuana, trying to escape the chaos of a child's birthday party, the lawyer explained. When Aiden Cruz entered the backyard, Miguel's judgment was severely impaired. What happened next was a tragic accident precipitated by substance abuse and mental instability. The prosecution saw it differently. This wasn't just an accident. After the initial incident, which we might understand as panic, Miguel Rodriguez had hours to call for help. Instead, he hid evidence. He created a false alibi. He allowed this family to suffer for 20 years while he buried the truth along with that child's body. Miguel took the stand. His testimony was devastating in its detail. "I was angry all the time back then," he said, voice hollow. "Angry at my parents for having another kid, angry at having to share my space, angry at everything. When Aiden came into the backyard, I just snapped. I grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him. I was yelling, telling him to get out. He was scared. He was crying. And then he fell." Miguel described hearing the sound of Aiden's head hitting the toolbox. The immediate silence that followed. The blood pooling on the shed floor. "I tried to wake him up. I kept shaking him, but gently this time, saying, 'Wake up, please wake up.' I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I checked if he was breathing. I put my ear to his chest like they do in movies. Nothing. His eyes were open, but he wasn't looking at anything." Miguel described hiding the body, the internal panic as search parties formed, as police interviewed his family. He described lying to his parents, lying to police, maintaining the lie for 20 years. "Every anniversary I thought about confessing," Miguel said. "Every time I saw Aiden Cruz at the store, at church, walking around looking for him, I wanted to tell her. But I was a coward. I was selfish. I was more afraid of prison than I was of her pain." The defense argued for 15 years. The prosecution demanded the maximum, 30. The judge settled on 25 years, with possibility of parole after 20. Aiden Cruz was given the opportunity to deliver a victim impact statement. She walked slowly to the stand, looking directly at Miguel for the first time since the trial began. "You took my son," she said, her voice steady and cold. "You took him, and then you took 20 more years of my life. I wasted 2 decades searching for a child you'd already buried. I hoped he was alive. I prayed every night that he was just lost, that someone had taken him but was caring for him, that I'd get him back someday." Her voice cracked. "You stole my hope. You stole my marriage, Marco, and I couldn't survive this. You stole my sanity. I've lived for 20 years in hell, and you were always right there, 3 houses down, watching me suffer." Miguel wept. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Your sorry doesn't give me back my son. Your sorry doesn't give me back 20 years. There is no sentence long enough for what you've done." The courtroom was silent except for Miguel's crying and Elena's measured breathing. The gavel came down. 25 years for taking a 5-year-old's life. But what measure of justice can ever balance that scale?